And this evening, I've asked Manju Cherian to do the summary. So over to Manju for the summary.
Last couple of weeks, we were looking at the Paul's trial, initially at the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem, followed by his trial in Caesarea before Felix, Festus, and finally before King Agrippa II. So none of them could find any charges against Paul that deserves punishment. Finally, we saw how Paul appealed to Caesar, and the decision was made to take Paul to Rome. So last week we looked at chapter 27 and was mainly focused on Paul's journey to Rome. Paul was accompanied by Aristarchus and Luke. So we mainly looked at three outline points. First of it being the route that they took. So we saw this. They boarded the ship from Caesarea, and the first stop was at Sidon, and it's the modern day Lebanon, and it's 67 miles from Caesarea. The next stop was at Myra. They changed ships at Myra. They moved to a larger Alexandrian ship. The next stop was Fairhaven, but as the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority of them decided to sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix. Fairhaven and Phoenix both are ports on the island of Crete. Through the storm, we saw that they mention another place, Shallow Syrtis, which is mentioned as a dangerous place with quicksand and also known as the graveyard of ships. So after 14 days of struggle in the sea, we see that the ship is wrecked and they finally land on the island of Malta. So the second point we looked in the outline was Paul more than a prisoner, and under that, the first point was Paul as a friend. The centurion who was with them, his name was Julius, and he had a favorable disposition towards Paul. We saw that when they landed at Sidon, Julius, in his kindness, allowed Paul to go to his friends so that they can provide for his needs. Again, in another incident, while they were having a rough time in the sea, the soldiers planned to kill the prisoners so that they won't escape. But since Julius wanted to spare Paul's life, he kept them from carrying out that plan. The second point was Paul as a captain. In Acts 27, 9 and 10 verses, we see Paul giving some wise advice to the centurion regarding their voyage. He warned them that their voyage could be disastrous, but the centurion followed the advice of the captain of the ship and decided to continue sailing until they reached Phoenix. Paul was able to give this advice probably because he was himself an expert sailor, and also it was that part of the year that was presumed dangerous for sailing. And the third point was Paul as a counselor. So after 14 days of struggle in the sea, they were losing control of the ship. And at that point, we see Paul taking up the role of a leader and counselor. Paul urges them to take some food and encourages them to keep up their courage. He tells them about the revelation he received from God that all lives will be spared. Third point in the outline was God present in the storm. So our God knows the end from the beginning. So right from the beginning, in Acts 23:11 itself, we read that God had a plan for Paul to witness for him in Rome. So it was all in God's plan. The voyage and the shipwreck and everything was in God's plan. He knew that from the beginning. So the second point is God appears in the storm. So our God is not someone who would abandon you in the midst of the storm. So even when Paul and his companions were in the middle of the storm, we see that the angel of the Lord appearing before Paul and assuring him about the promise which was given to him before about all the lives being spared. The third point is God makes a way where there seemed to be no way. So in verse 24, we see that God assuring, do not be afraid, Paul, you must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So the ship is wrecked, and they are completely lost. And it's at that time that God is giving that assurance that He's going to um, stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously spared all their lives. Uh, so the fourth point again is God makes you a herald of His hope and peace. So Paul, he understands that God appeared before him not only to strengthen him, but also he has a ministry to others. So, so we see him saying, urging them to keep up their courage. For I have faith in God that it will happen just as He had told me. So just like Paul, we are also called to be a herald of God's hope and peace, particularly in this current scenario where the whole world is struggling. So that's it, Acha. Over to you.
Thank you, Manju, for bringing the summary so well. We are now, I don't know if you all are smiling and happy that we have come to the last chapter in the book of Acts. I don't know if you've been eagerly waiting for this day, but I believe that you have been really blessed. I have been immensely blessed by preparing each Bible study. And so we are in Acts chapter 28. Now, as we come into Acts chapter 28, what we need to, we always had this outline before us, this chart before us as we began on the first day. And it is nice to see the green line reaching to the end, and there's nothing beyond that. I'm sure that your view of this chart, what was on the first day and what it is now, is much, much different. In fact, when I first presented this chart in Acts chapter 1, I was really wondering whether people will get put off by this chart itself, because so much of words and so many figures and different boxes and here and there. There's nothing symmetric. It looks all big and looks very complicated. But today, I'm sure for those who have been regular at this Bible study, this chart means a lot. You have the summary of the book of Acts in one page. And so this chart is very important. And whenever my advice would be, whenever you read the book of Acts, if you're reading some chapter in between, it will be good to take a look at this chart to know where exactly you are, what exactly is the situation that you are encountering in the book of Acts. And as a matter of information, I'd like to tell you that I have put a link in the chat box, if you can see your chat box on your screen, and there is a link to get a feedback about what you feel about the future Bible studies. There are hardly 3 or 4 questions. It will hardly take you a minute. And if you would like to, I would like all of us to respond to that, and accordingly, we can decide about the future. And I've said that your name is optional. If you don't like to put your name, then that's optional. I hope all of you will fill it at the end of the Bible study today. So here we are in in Acts chapter 28, and Paul has finally reached Rome. So this is where we are getting into Acts chapter 28, and then we read in this chart that is around 60 to 67 AD, Paul's arrest in Rome. Most of it was a house arrest, and you read that in Acts chapter 28, roughly about 5 to 7 years. We can easily say it was about 6 years. And Paul wrote all these letters, and I will be coming to this in the course of our study today. So we had this outline with us when we began, when we came to the part after Paul's third missionary journey. And I hope you can picturize in your mind that after 3 journeys of Paul, then we have the 3 trials, that is the trial in Jerusalem, Caesarea, and we don't actually read the trial in Rome, but we read more of Paul's journey to Rome. And that is, we started in Acts chapter 27, and we today complete Paul's journey to Rome and a little bit of what happened in Rome. So I've made an outline there are 5 points in this for Acts chapter 28. We begin with some miracles that happened in Malta. We know that that is where the ship, there was a shipwreck, and they all swam to the island, and that island was called Malta. And then we read about Paul's arrival in Rome in verses 11 to 16. And then Paul has a message to the Jews, and that is we find that in 17 to 24. And he declares openly that the gospel is to the Gentiles. If the Jews are not interested, then it is to the Gentiles. And then we talk about Paul in Rome, what exactly happened in Rome, and how long he was there, and we just talk about that there. So coming to the first point about miracles in Malta, we read in Acts chapter 28, verses 1 to 10. And what actually happened is Paul and the whole team, that was, we saw that it was a big number, and they were about 276 people in that ship, and they all came and landed in Malta. And they were in Malta for almost 3 months. And then they set sail from Malta to Rome. So verse 2 very clearly, verse 1 begins by saying, once safely on shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us because it was raining and cold. And for a team, for a group, a large group who feared whether they would be alive because of the storm and the way the ship was breaking up, and to a team like that, to come to an island where people show kindness, they built a fire and welcomed us, and it was raining and cold. And then what happens is that Paul is delivered from a snake bite, which we read until verse 6. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood and he put it on the fire. A viper, driven out of the heat, fastened itself on his hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer. For though he escaped the sea, the goddess justice has not allowed him to live." Just imagine Paul's predicament there. And extremes, we see extremes of superstition. Of course, they may be a little primitive people. We don't know because it is an island, and we don't know what kind of habitation. But then we understand that these people were very superstitious, and they knew that this ship is carrying a lot of prisoners, and so they believed that something unusual like this happens, and something deadly like this happens. It is a curse of God, and they say that this guy must be surely a murderer. That is what they believed him to be. Then verse 5 says, "But Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected him to swell up or suddenly fall dead. But after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their minds and said he was God." So here you see the extremes of superstition. People, at one point they say that he's a murderer, and the next point they say that he is God. Then something more happens in Malta. There is this leader of the island, the chief of the island, Publius, and we read about him in verse 7 to 9. There was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and showed us generous hospitality for 3 days. His father was sick in bed, suffering from fever and dysentery. Paul went in to see him and after prayer placed his hands on him and healed him. When this happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. Now, we see that Publius was the chief of the island. And then we also see that he showed generous hospitality for 3 days. I'm sure that this would have been a welcome time for all the people in the ship, and particularly to Paul, who has been facing so much of hostility, to relax and experience the hospitality of the people, and then also to pray for people and to and several people sick people came to him and they were healed. Now, I want you to think about something which is not mentioned here is we know that there is a doctor in the team. Can anybody guess who's the doctor in the team? Can you unmute your mic and tell me who's the doctor in this team?
Luke.
Oh, great. Excellent. So Dr. Luke is there. And somebody suffering from fever and dysentery, who would be the better option, Luke or Paul? And here we see Paul placed his hands on him and prayed, and he was healed. So we see the miraculous power of God happening in this place. And then we also read about the generosity of the natives. Verse 10 says, they honored us in many ways, and when we were ready to sail, they furnished us with the supplies we needed. So you see in chapter 27, they were rocked in the ocean, almost reaching the point of death, and not knowing how and when or what will be the way they will survive. They were looking for a way to survive. They were thrown into the sea. All this happened, and then God takes them to a kind of a retreat on an island, enjoying the hospitality and the love and affection of the people. And I believe that even in our life, that when things get too hard and too rough, God somehow brings rest. And we sometimes don't understand why that rest. We think that things are not working, or as you see that Paul had to face the shipwreck and then a time of rest and healing. So let's believe that some of those times are forced recreations that God gives to us for us to relax and to renew ourselves. So this is about the miracles that happened in Malta. We're going into the second point where we say that Paul's arrival in Rome. Now, it says in verse 11, after 3 months, we put out to sea in a ship that had wintered in the island. It was an Alexandrian ship with a figurehead of twin gods, Castor and Pollux. We put in Syracuse and stayed for 3 days. From there, we set sail, arrived in Rhegium. The next day, the south wind came up, and on the following day, we reached Puteoli. There we found some brothers and sisters who invited us to spend a week with them, and so we came to Rome. The brothers and sisters there had heard that we were coming, and they traveled as far as the Forum of Appius and the 3 taverns to meet us. At the sight of these people, Paul thanked God and was encouraged. We got to Rome. Paul was allowed to live by himself with a soldier in guard. Now, some of the things that we observe is that it was journey begins after 3 months, according to verse 11. Now, we know that Paul was refreshed in body, mind, and soul. These 3 months was time of rest, time of enjoying the hospitality of the people, praying for them, doing his ministry. He enjoyed the hospitality of the natives in Malta. That is what we understand. And then we also see that it was an Alexandrian ship. So the Alexandrian ship, we know that there were ships regularly carrying wheat from Egypt to Italy, Egypt breadbasket of Egypt, and carrying wheat regularly to Italy. And then we see that this Alexandrian ship had the figurehead of twin gods, Castor and Pollux, the son of Zeus, protector of sailors and rescuers from storms. Now, most of the ships in that belt, they carried the figure of these two gods, and they believed that these gods were the gods of the sailors, and they were the ones that would rescue them from all kinds of storms and from the attacks in the sea journey. Okay, so in their voyages. So then we see the route. They go from Malta to Syracuse, to Rhegium, to Puteoli, and then to Rome. So, and we also read in verse 14 that they stayed 7 days in Puteoli, where they met the believers and others. So here's a picture of the journey that they went through, they took. That is, we know that they were in Malta, and then from Malta they come to Syracuse, and then Rhegium, and then Puteoli, and then we have Rome here. So this is the last leg of their journey, and they reach Rome. So as we go further in Paul's arrival to Rome, the third point there we see is believers met Paul on the way to Rome. We read that in verse 14 and 15. When they reached this place called, there are two places or three. One is that when they were in Puteoli for 7 days. Then we also see in verse 15 that believers from the Forum of Appius, that is about 43 miles from Rome, and then believers from the three taverns, that is about 10 miles from Rome. These people came to see Paul. Probably they heard that Paul is is in the ship and reaching this place. So then we read of Paul in Rome in verse 16. So as we read about Paul in Rome, we need to keep in mind that one, it was the fulfillment of God's plan. According to Acts chapter 23, verse 11, the following night the Lord stood near Paul and said, "Take courage. As you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify in Rome." So this was the promise that God had given Paul, that he would testify for him in Rome. So we see it as a fulfillment of God's plan. It was also a fulfillment of Paul's desire. Because if you read Romans chapter 1, verse 10 and 11, it says, "In my prayers at all times, and I pray that now at last by God's will, the way may be open for me to come to you. I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong." So we understand that the church in Rome was not established by Paul. Paul wrote the letter to Romans even before he reached Rome, expressing his desire, how much he longs to see the people in Rome. And then also, as we read in Acts chapter 19, verse 21, Paul expresses his desire. He says in verse 21 that this is coming to the end on his return journey from after the third missionary journey. Now, after these things were finished, Paul purposed in his spirit to go to Jerusalem, after he passed through Macedonia and Achaia, saying, "After I have been there, I must also see Rome." So it was Paul's desire to see Rome. So we see it as a fulfillment of God's plan and a fulfillment of Paul's desires. So then we come to the third point, that is, Paul has a message for the Jews. And we read that in verses 17 to 24. A very interesting passage where it says, 3 days later, he called together the local Jewish leaders. When they assembled, Paul said to them, "My brothers, although I have done nothing against our people or against the custom of our ancestors, I was arrested in Jerusalem and handed over to the Romans. They examined me and wanted to release me because I was not guilty of any crime deserving death. The Jews objected, so I was compelled to make an appeal to Caesar. I certainly did not intend to bring any charge against my own people. For this reason, I have asked to see you and talk with you. It is because of the hope of Israel that I am bound with this chain." They replied, "We have not received any letters from Judea concerning you, and none of our people who have come from there has reported or said anything bad about you. But we want to hear what your views are, for we know that people everywhere are talking against this sect." They arranged to meet Paul on a certain day and came in large numbers to the place where he was staying. He witnessed to them from morning till evening, explaining about the kingdom of God and from the law of Moses and from the prophets. He tried to persuade them about Jesus. Some were convinced by what he said, but others would not believe. So what we see is Paul explains the reason that he is in Rome. So his argument, he puts forth everything very clearly. He says, the Jews, we know that when Paul came back after his third missionary journey, unlike the first and second missionary journey, he had gone back to Caesarea. But here we see that that he comes to Jerusalem, and Paul, when he comes to Jerusalem, he is warned by the apostles that he could be in trouble, and we know that he got into trouble. The Jews arrested him in Jerusalem, and they handed him over to the Romans, and we know that story. And they found him not guilty, deserving death. They tried him at different levels. We saw about how Felix and Festus, everyone, even Agrippa, they all he stood before all of them, and when he made his defense, they could not find any guilt in him. And so that is the reason when the Jews objected to the decisions of the court, that is when Paul appealed to Caesar. He appeals to Caesar, saying that we really don't know whether Paul was looking for justice or Paul was looking for a reason to get to Rome. So whatever it is, he appealed to Caesar at that point, and so now he is in Rome. So he explains about his journey. How is it that he came to Rome? So after listening to Paul, what was the response of the Jews? We read that in verse 21 to 24. First thing they say is they are totally ignorant of the charges made on Paul. They say you notice that in verse 21, we have not received any letters from Judea concerning you, and none of our people who have come from there has reported or said anything bad of you. So the Jews in Rome are ignorant of the charges that are made on Paul. But they are eager to hear Paul's story. And verse 22, it says, "But we want to hear what your views are." So they are eager to hear. And then Paul spends a whole day explaining the gospel to the Jews. And he spoke from the law of Moses and from the prophets. And verse 23 concludes, he tried to persuade them about Jesus. And what was the response? Some believed, and the others just walked away. They just didn't walk away. There was other issues that happened. As we proceed, we will be able to see that. So what happens? So we go to the fourth point, that is the gospel to the Gentiles. Now we read in verse 25. They disagreed among. This is about the Jews who listened to Paul for a whole day. And we saw that some believed and others did not. Then it continues by saying they disagreed among themselves and began to leave after Paul had made his final statement. What did he say? The Holy Spirit spoke the truth to your ancestors when he said it through Isaiah the prophet. Go to this people and say, you will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but not perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused, and they hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. Therefore, I want you to know God's salvation has been sent to the Gentiles, and they will listen. After he said this, the Jews left, arguing vigorously among themselves. So Paul here is quoting Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 to 10. And the reason he quotes that is to repeatedly remind them about the words of the prophet, which said that the Jews have failed to listen to God, and so God will use the Gentiles. And that is what Paul is trying to convey through this verse. He says the gospel is not limited to the Jews. Now, in verse 28, he says that is his conclusion. Therefore, I want you to know God's salvation has been sent to the Gentiles, and they will listen. So, and Paul is all the more convinced because God, when Jesus met him in the road to Damascus, he said, I'm going to make you a light to the Gentiles. So that was what Paul had to convey to the Gentiles. Now, coming to the last point about Paul in Rome, this may be of a little of some interest to all of us to know that Paul, for 2 years, Paul stayed there in his own rented house and welcomed all those who came to see him. He proclaimed the kingdom of God and taught about the Lord Jesus Christ with all boldness and without hindrance. Amazing, isn't it? So a prisoner, he's brought to Rome for trial under Caesar, and he proclaimed the kingdom of, despite of what his life condition was, what his situation was. He was bold enough to proclaim the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. So what happens to Paul in Rome from 61 to 67 AD? 61 AD to 63 AD, he was a prisoner, and he wrote prison epistles. We call among Paul's epistles, there are few prison epistles, and the prison epistles are Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. We saw this in our chart, the second chart that we had that I'd shown you at the beginning of the slides today. And so that slide mentioned about the letters that Paul wrote. There are a few more letters that Paul wrote from Rome, but 61 to 63, when he was a prisoner, he wrote Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. Then we know that from 63 to 65, Paul was free to minister. So the trial is going on for almost 6 to 7 years that he was in Rome. And between 63 and 65, Paul was free to minister, and that is the time he wrote First Timothy and Titus. And then in 66, Paul was imprisoned again, and he wrote Second Timothy. And then we believe that in 67, Paul was martyred he had to die as a martyr in Rome. Under Emperor Nero, he was sentenced to, if I understand it right, he was beheaded by the emperor then. So this is what we know about Paul in Rome. Paul was there in Rome for 6 years, 61 to 63. He was, as we read that, he was a prisoner, and then he wrote the prison epistles, that is Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. And 63 to 65, 2 more years, he was allowed to minister. People could come and see him. He could talk to them. and that is when he wrote First Timothy and Titus. And then 66 again, he was imprisoned, and then he wrote Second Timothy, and finally in 67 he was martyred. So with this, we come to the end of the book of Acts, and that is where the book of Acts ends, which says that he continued to proclaim. So that is maybe around 65 or 66 AD that we know about all that happened to Paul. That is 2 years that is mentioned here, and then we'll see how he was there for almost 6 to 7 years. So what is our takeaway from today's Bible study, that is Acts chapter 28, and also from the whole book of Acts? So my thought would be that your life is Acts chapter 29. What is Acts chapter 29? There is no Acts chapter 29. So my question to you is, how has the 28 chapters of the book of Acts impacted you? And if it has impacted you, in what way is your life going to be different? And that is Acts chapter 29. We know that basically the word Acts, or Acts of the Apostles, and we know that it is referring to what the apostles did. And particularly, we have a great chunk of chapters relating to Paul, his ministry, his missionary journeys, his trials, and how even through his difficult moments, he stood as a herald of God's peace, agent of God, ambassador of God, a servant of God, and a minister of God. So, dear friends, I would like you to look at your own life and see how your life can be impacted by these great people. We have the stories of amazing people in the book of Acts. We have Peter as a tall leader who took up the challenge. We read about Stephen, who was martyred. We read about Philip, who was an evangelist who was only called to wait at tables, but went across preaching to people in Samaria. And we had some amazing people that we read about in the book of Acts. And I want you to know that your life is Acts chapter 29. Let's not end Acts with Acts chapter 28. Let's continue to live out at least an ounce of what the apostles did while they were on this earth. We all are called to be God's ambassadors. We are called to be his heralds. We are called to be his servants, his ministers. And God has given each one of us gifts and talents, and we all have a calling. We need to fulfill that. And may God enable each one of us to fulfill this